Cutting the lock, that was the moment everything changed. 1 second wrench in hand, sweat trickling down my back in the heat, and the next that sharp snap of metal echoing across the fields. Karen Whitmore's voice followed shrill and proud as a rooster at dawn, carrying over the pasture and straight through my nerves. The sight. A parade of neon vests and mirrored sunglasses strutting through my front gate like they owned the place, 3 gleaming white trucks blocking my driveway as if I'd robbed a bank instead of raised horses. There's a kind of showmanship that only happens when people think they've got all the power. Clipboards up, cameras rolling, neighbors barking orders, dust clouding the air while my own land got trampled by folks convinced they could strong-arm their way to justice. And Karen, red-faced, sweating, shaking with that special fury only a suburban dictator can muster. She points at me, yells, "This area's under HOA inspection." I just smirked, wiped the grease from my hands and said, "You sure you're in the right jurisdiction?" Didn't bother moving, didn't need to because just 50 feet behind that barn door, the county sheriff himself was sipping coffee at my kitchen table, clueless that a suburban mob was trying to run his job for him. Folks think living on the edge of an HOA means peace and quiet order and safety. For a while I bought into that too. 15 years ago, bought this land, a hard-earned stretch of earth 20 acres out past the edge of Cypress Ridge Estates. Built my own place, painted the barn red, planted rows of corn, kept a couple horses for company. No meetings, no dues, no one telling me what color mailbox I needed. Freedom pure and simple. Then Karen moved in. 4 years ago, barely had time to learn the town's name before she'd named herself HOA president. There's a certain kind of person who can't help but crave authority, the crisp blazer clipboard glued to her hand, convinced she was judge and jury of the whole county. When she walked the boundary the first time, wrinkling her nose, she complained that my horses were offensive to the community's delicate sensibilities. All I said was, "Ma'am, that's called nature." That was it, the spark that lit her little crusade. Letters started showing up weekly, accusing me of everything from unauthorized livestock to improper landscaping, even violating community visual standards for not painting my barn beige like the rest of the houses. Beige. Can't make that up. Every envelope stamped HOA Enforcement Committee, which really just meant Karen and her friends with a printer. At first I laughed it off. Then the fake fines came printed on fancy paper stamped with some homemade seal. Called the county clerk, and they nearly split a gut laughing. My land was zoned agricultural long before Cypress Ridge was even a thought outside their reach, free as a bird. Karen didn't care for facts. If anything, no made her double down. Showed up with her patrol taking pictures of my fence trying to scare me with talk of non-compliance. Warned them to leave or I'd call the sheriff. They chuckled, wrong move. Sheriff Tom Brown, old friend from high school, showed up in uniform. Karen tried to spin circles, waving her printouts in his face. He handed them back, said, "Ma'am, this isn't worth the paper it's printed on." From then on, Karen decided he was my partner in crime. Weeks passed, rumors started, whispers that I was running an illegal salvage yard, maybe hiding something criminal behind my barn. Some neighbors believed her, others rolled their eyes, but Karen gathered herself a little army, all too happy to feel important for once. The trouble wasn't their power, really, it was their arrogance. One Friday, Sheriff Brown called. Needed a quiet place for an unmarked vehicle while he looked into stolen construction equipment. Guest house beside the barn was perfect, so he moved in for the weekend, kept to himself, kept the blinds low. Later that day, I spotted Karen driving by, slowing down at my gate, snapping photos like she was on a stakeout. Didn't realize she'd decided this was her final straw. Next morning, there's a big official-looking notice taped to the gate: emergency HOA inspection, legal action threatened if I didn't comply. Legal action from people who didn't have one speck of authority out here. I chuckled, but there was a little voice telling me, don't take this lightly. Karen wasn't just annoying anymore, she was dangerous when she felt powerful. So I did what any careful farmer would. Checked the cameras, made sure everything was rolling, set an extra lens facing the main gate just in case. That night, Sheriff Brown saw the notice, just grinned. "She's really asking for trouble, Mike." I shrugged. This time she might just get it. By noon the next day, the trouble came rumbling up the drive. Dust everywhere, the rumble of engines, a suburban convoy, 3 HOA trucks, each one trying to look more official than the last. Out they spilled, men in reflective vests, walkie-talkies, clipboards, and Karen front and center, white blazer blazing in the sun. Sheriff Brown, still inside working, had no idea. Out on the porch, that slow boil of frustration mixed with a strange curiosity. What exactly was she hoping to pull this time? She stepped out, binder in hand, barking official HOA inspection at the top of her lungs. Neighbors lined the fence, pulling out their phones, my dogs barking, the wind picking up just enough to carry the tension. It hit me then, she wasn't here for a conversation, she came for a show. To humiliate me, to prove that nobody could refuse her HOA. I just smiled, leaned on the rail, and let her dig her own grave. Stan, her husband, a big guy, soft-hearted, hesitated with the bolt cutters at the gate. Karen snapped, "Cut it." Metal popped, the lock dropped. She declared victory. "This property is under official HOA inspection." "Calm as you please," I said. "Funny, you mention authority." Just then, from the barn, the sheriff stepped out. Badge glinting, full uniform, every inch the law. Karen's bravado disappeared faster than dew in July. She stammered, tried to argue bylaws and regulations. Sheriff Brown listened, then told her straight, "Ma'am, this is private land. You broke a lock, trespassed, damaged property. That's a crime." He radioed dispatch, called for backup. Karen blanched. 2 county cruisers pulled in, deputies separating the patrol, taking statements, snapping photos. Stan muttered, "Told her this was a bad idea." I just leaned in and said, "Next time, listen to your husband." There was satisfaction in watching Karen's little army wilt under the sun. Neighbors laughing, the so-called enforcers stripped of badges and bluster. For the first time in months, peace settled over my land. Brown pulled me aside. "This isn't just about trespassing, Mike. There's a deeper mess. Your HOA president's name came up in a money laundering investigation. Turns out all that fury about community standards was hiding something rotten: fake contracts, embezzled dues, intimidation campaigns. The footage from that inspection became gold for the investigation. Karen was arrested within days, fraud, obstruction, forgery, the works. The news ran her mugshot, hair, wild eyes, shell-shocked, the queen of the HOA, now a cautionary tale for every clipboard dictator out there. The county dissolved the Cypress Ridge HOA. The new neighborhood committee, voluntary, open, focused on helping instead of ruling. The best part, neighbors started coming by to say thanks. Linda, who'd warned me about Karen's plans, gave me a framed still from the viral video, Karen at the gate, the sheriff stepping out of the barn, and beneath it, "Respect boundaries." That picture hangs in my barn now, a reminder of just how far patience and a sense of humor can go. There's a lesson buried in all this, one that sneaks up on you like a cold wind in autumn. Power doesn't come from titles or fancy paperwork. It comes from standing firm, doing right even when it's inconvenient. Karen built her whole empire on control and intimidation, but in the end it was her own arrogance that brought her down. Justice didn't arrive with fireworks, it came quiet, steady, and in the end did exactly what needed to be done. Some folks still talk about that day, the day the sheriff walked out of the barn, and the whole town saw what real authority looks like. The fields are quieter now, the only drama comes from weather and stubborn fence posts. The air's a little cleaner. I still walk my boundary every morning, coffee in hand, just grateful for the peace. Funny thing though, every so often something small reminds me. Like the day I found a faded, water-stained HOA notice under a rock by the creek. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action. I burned it without a second thought, not out of anger, just relief. That chapter was closed. What sticks most even now is this: when people forget the difference between authority and respect, they end up building their own downfall stone by stone. Sometimes justice takes the scenic route, but it always shows up sooner or later. So here's the question that keeps me up sometimes. Where's the line between order and overreach, between protecting a community and becoming its bully? If you've ever found yourself staring down a clipboard-wielding Karen or standing your ground when power tried to walk right over you, share your story. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be here listening, gate locked, camera rolling, and a fresh cup of coffee in hand.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.